Destination weddings and elopements are tons of fun. We love them. But during these COVID times, what's okay and what's not okay? Today we're talking about your options, the options you have if you want to have a destination wedding or elopement during COVID, and what you should avoid. Hi there, I'm Jamie Chang, your destination wedding planning guru and designer of joy at Mango Me's Events, the creator of Passport to Joy, the step-by-step online wedding planning course for couples, and the founder of Let's I Do This, intimate and virtual weddings in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I share real and honest and useful wedding planning tips, tricks, and advice you can use to help make planning your wedding easier and more joyful, so you can create a wedding you love. Because let's face it, wedding planning isn't always easy. In fact, it can be super stressful and downright painful. And nobody wants that. So we're bringing the joy back to wedding planning. Are you ready? Okay, so let's do this. Let's dive in here. Now, we love destination weddings. I love destination weddings. It's something we specialize in at Mango Me's Events, and we've been to tons of fun places and worked with lots of amazing, awesome couples. But destination weddings are definitely their own thing. They're non-traditional and they're just not for everyone. But the couples who love them. So if that's you, I totally get it. But with COVID, our good friend Rona, right? Destination weddings, kind of like everything else, has been upended. And, it's actually a little harder for destination weddings than normal weddings because it's not only a gathering, but there's travel involved as well. And the two, coupled together kind of is a recipe for a disaster in these COVID times. So for most couples planning a destination wedding, your plans have been postponed or canceled or just put on hold. But what if you still want one? What if you want one now? What are your options? So first off, before we answer this question, let's first talk about safety, because safety is so important. So important. Any decision you make with regards to your destination wedding or, any wedding for that matter, has to be made with safety in mind. Because, people's lives are just too important not to be safe. So if you're curious about safety and you want to learn more, we do have another video that you can check out below. All right. But with safety in mind, let's talk about your options. Now, we want to keep both yourself, your partner, your loved ones, your community, and the community that you're traveling to safe. And so there are some things you can do and some things you're definitely going to want to avoid. So let's start first and talk about size. Now, doing a destination elopement in the most traditional sense of that word is going to be your safest option because, it's just the two of you. The only people traveling will be the two of you. But if you want, say, a small handful of friends and family with you, that's possible in a few kind of instances here. And so, if the distance isn't far, if, they self-quarantine or get tested, if they take precautions normally and are good about being safe in their normal life, think, masks, social distancing, staying home, those kinds of things. But even with all these things in mind, if your guests are doing all these things, if you plan on having guests at your destination wedding in attendance, keep your numbers small. And when I say small, I'm saying ideally, 10 or less. And it's really because the larger, number you have, the more guests you have, the bigger the risk. And with a destination wedding, you want to take as little risk as possible, okay? So we talked about size, that's size. Keep it small, right? Now I want to talk about location. Now, the question you likely have, that's kind of, running around in your head right now is, where can you have a destination wedding or elopement? But the real question is, where should you have a destination wedding or elopement? Because, can and should are two very different things in this day and age. So there are a number of factors that you're going to want to think through, and factors and criteria, I guess we shall say, that you're going to want to consider and think about before you choose a location. But here are the biggies, and we'll go through the big ones that you can start thinking about it, okay? First, you want to keep it domestic. So, I know it's super fun to go somewhere international. I mean, I have a huge desire to do traveling as well and go somewhere international. But it's much safer and it's easier if you keep it domestic because, things can change quickly, as we all know. And staying within the country just is safer. It's safer, it's easier, which leads me to number 2, which is you want to keep it close. So you want to not only choose a domestic location, but one that's close by. And when I say close by, ideally, within driving distance, and ideally within driving distance within a day. What this does is it just limits the number of stops you need to make and the amount of contact required with other people and places. All right, so keep it domestic, keep it close. Now, you also want to choose a location where weddings are allowed, right? So you want to pick a state and a county where weddings are allowed, which in most cases should be pretty much everywhere. But depending on the location, there might be, limitations around weddings. And I know your immediate thought is going to be, I don't want to go to a place that has limitations on weddings. But it's actually a good thing as opposed to a bad thing. And here's why. Because it means the area is being safe. Okay, so let's take an example here. An area that, say, doesn't allow wedding receptions, which, includes food, drink, and dancing, etc., is going to be a safer place than an area that allows weddings up to 100. Right? Think about it. So restrictions or limitations, if you will, around weddings are just not necessarily a bad thing. In addition to paying attention to restrictions around gatherings, you also want to pay attention to the COVID rates in the state and the county that you're thinking about, and choose, obviously, a location where they have consistently low rates. Couple this, right, with the previous point, and it'll show you that, a good place is going to be a place that takes safety into account, that takes safety seriously, and also has low COVID rates. All right, another factor you're going to want to consider are travel restrictions. Now, each state is going to have potentially different travel restrictions or requirements, and those things can change, so you're going to have to stay on top of that. But they may have things for people coming from somewhere else. And so, while a 14-day quarantine or, getting a negative test isn't a bad thing, think of it similarly to the wedding restriction concept that we just talked about. Just be aware of those restrictions before you choose a location, because they may or may not, work for you for one reason or another. All right, and then the last factor or criteria you're going to want to think about is you want to pick a spot, ideally, with nice outdoor spaces. Ideally in areas that are a little more remote, where you can just spread out, where you can feel less constrained. And mainly it's just because, obviously, outdoor weddings are going to be safer, and the more space you have will also just make you feel safer too. All right, now with everything we just talked about, with all of what we just talked about in mind, your mind is probably, thinking through, having a little fun, thinking about different destinations. And that's awesome. That's great. But before you settle on one, there are a couple of other things I want to mention and, some factors to keep in mind. So, number one, your location. Don't forget to pay attention to the, COVID rates in your area. If your area happens to be struggling, traveling is just not a great idea until things get more under control. In addition, you also want to pay attention to the travel restrictions in your area. So be aware of what you may, have to do upon your return. Once again, a self-imposed quarantine or getting a test is not a bad idea. Now, another factor you're really going to want to think about are your guests. So if you're having guests, whether that's 2 people or 10 people, make sure you apply the criteria and the factors we talked about to them as well. So what do I mean? I mean that their location is doing well, that they don't have to travel very far, etc. Okay? So we've gone through, your options and what's okay, what's not okay, what you should ideally avoid, etc. when it comes to your destination wedding or elopement now. But there's one last thing I want to mention, okay? And just remember that you're taking a risk. You're taking a risk with a destination wedding. And I just want you to be as careful and intentional with all of your decisions as you can be. If you keep safety in mind, you'll be okay. All right? Think about that. Keep that at the back of your head as you're making every decision, and you'll do fine. All right? And of course, if you have any questions, please let me know, okay? Now I have a question for you. So given everything we've talked about and the little catalog going on in your head right now in terms of location, what's a destination wedding that you're excited about for potentially your destination wedding or elopement? Let me know in a comment below. And if you enjoyed today's video, please like it, give us some thumbs up. You could check out our other wedding planning videos for even more tips, and hit subscribe so you can get access to all the new ones. And if you want help through the entire wedding planning process, including having access to a personal wedding advisor, please check out my online course, Passport to Joy. You can find all the links below, because you deserve to enjoy your engagement, no matter what your budget is, and even in the middle of a pandemic. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye!